I realized that the disappointment and the hardships were going to happen to lead to the better, more exciting stuff.
Melissa Gilbert begged Michael Landon to change the little house on the Prairie plots. But America wanted love, so she had to give it to them. She had never been kissed before she was 15. He knew it was wrong when he was 23. Still, they shot scene after scene while 100 team members watched. In the dark, her mother stood and cried. People were angry and wrote letters. Both stars are now finally saying what everyone thought but wouldn't say. The real story behind their friendship on screen is much worse than anyone thought. Melissa Gilbert began her life with a broken heart before she even had a name. She was born in Los Angeles on May 8, 1964. Kathy Wood and David Darlington, who were her real parents, were getting married and already had 3 kids between them from previous marriages. They gave her up for adoption just one day after she was born. They said they couldn't pay for a 7th child. Melanie never stayed the night with them. Paul Gilbert, an actor and comic, and his wife Barbara Crane, a dancer and actress, took her in right away. That moment of being alone with him will always be with her. After many years, she wrote in her book, Prairie Tale, "A big part of my life has been an illusion." Paul Gilbert was more than a dad. He was everything to her. But on February 13, 1976, that world fell apart. Melissa learned that her dad had died of a stroke when she was only 11 years old. It made sense. He had been through one before. But the truth hurt a lot more. Paul Gilbert had killed himself. No one told her for decades. He was a fighter pilot in World War II and was in agonizing pain all the time because of the injuries he got. Even though the Veterans Administration was taking care of him, they couldn't help him. When Melissa, 44 years old, found out the truth, it broke her heart. She told Oprah that for weeks she had been barely able to do anything. She hired a private detective in the end to find out what really happened. She wanted to know. She had to figure out why the person who had kept her from being unwanted was now gone, and no one was telling her the truth. Melissa was adopted, but she was born into the show business. Barbara Crane, her adoptive mother, was the daughter of Harry Crane, who made The Honeymooners and came up with the idea of star roasts for the Dean Martin show. He had written for the Golden Globes, the Oscars, and even the Emmys. He was a big deal in the early days of TV, and that made the world Melissa would grow up in what it is today. Barbara also worked in the theater business. That meant Melissa grew up in a home where TVs, scripts, and red carpets were easy to get to. They were a normal part of her life. That Hollywood vibe went through the whole family. They had another child, Jonathan Gilbert, who they adopted in 1967. After a few years, in 1975, Barbara had a daughter named Sarah with her new husband, the lawyer Harold Abelles. In the end, Melissa, Jonathan, and Sarah were all big stars on TV. Melissa didn't become famous by accident. She worked for it. She was already in ads before she turned 5. One of her most well-known roles was in an Alpo dog food ad with Lorne Greene in 1977. Greene and Gilbert got along great, and in the ad, she was talking about how proud she was that her dog, Fluffy, had won a blue ribbon. Melissa Gilbert walked into a room full of more than 500 hopeful girls when she was 9 years old. She left with a part that would define her for the rest of her life. In early 1973, NBC was looking all over the country for the right kid to play Laura Ingalls in a new pilot. Something happened when Melissa walked in and started her screen test with Michael Landon. She wasn't the only person he saw. He saw his daughter on the screen. He later said that her show was like magic. She was not pretending. Her name was Laura. Her life would never be the same again after that night at the Burbank studios. What's funny? She didn't know who Landon was. He was famous for 14 years on Bonanza, but she had never seen it, so she didn't act nervous or try to impress him with praise when she tried out. She only acted it out. Landon had been looking for someone who was honest and didn't try too hard. She didn't think of him as famous. He seemed like her dad. The next 9 years of Little House on the Prairie would be built around that bond, that easy relationship. It felt like Melissa was in a TV show when she found out she got the part. Leslie Landon, one of her classmates, walked up to her with a big smile one day. Leslie, Michael Landon's real daughter, told her, "My dad picked you." There was no phone call or studio announcement. It was just 2 girls in the hallway of the school. After many years, those 2 girls would be back on set. In the last few seasons of the show, Leslie played schoolteacher Etta Plum. She shot the pilot in the beautiful hills of California in the summer of 1973. It aired in March of the next year, and more than 17 million people watched it. That was really big. But even after that, she had to wait almost a year to find out if the show would stay on for a full season. That kind of waiting takes a long time for kids. But shooting started up again in June 1974, and Little House on the Prairie was born. The show ran until 1983 and was about family, struggle, and life on the frontier. One moment decided her fate. She had to act out a scene where Laura says goodbye to her dog at her last tryout. It was hard, real tears, painful. Landon paid close attention, and by the end, his eyes were filled with tears. He was moved, which is something not many adult actors could do, let alone a kid. It was not practice. The method wasn't right. It was honest and raw from the heart. He knew that day that she wasn't just pretending to be Laura Ingalls, she was herself. From 10 to 19 years old, Melissa wasn't just pretending to be someone else, she grew up in front of the whole country. More than 20 million people watched each episode of the show at its peak. Every week, she was in the living room of America. Millions of people watched on TV as she lost her baby teeth, got bigger, and went through puberty. That long, no child had ever been watched so closely in history. It wasn't just a show. It happened all over the country, one story at a time. While most kids rode their bikes or did their chores, Melissa was getting her camera ready for dawn and learning lines. But there was still school, learned right there on the set, instead of going to a regular school. To follow the rules set by the state, tutors would jump in between takes and teach quickly and effectively. It wasn't simple, but it worked. The other child players and she were close. They were kids who lived in 2 worlds at once, as students and as stars. Melissa made time for parts that showed she wasn't just a one-show wonder, even though she had a lot going on. She played Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker in 1979 when she was only 15 years old. It was powerful and moving, and it got her nominated for an Emmy. In another dramatic part the next year, she played Anne Frank. Once more, another nominee. It wasn't just cute kid parts. She played some of the toughest young roles on TV, and she did a great job with all of them while she was still filming Little House. Melissa's story is crazy, but not because of her fame or awards. It's crazy because of how much she became Laura Ingalls. The person did more than just show up on TV. Melanie took on some of Laura's beliefs, battles, and strength. She said that working at Little House wasn't just a job. It was her youth, her family, and everything she knew. As the show came to a close, it was hard to tell who she was and who she played. The person helped her grow up. This season of Little House on the Prairie, Dean Butler played Almanzo Wilder. He was 23 years old at the time. Melissa Gilbert was only 15 years old when she played Laura Ingalls. Now, 8 years might not seem like a big difference, but in 1979, it felt like a huge gap. Dean even said it was like the Grand Canyon for age gaps. For a show that ran during Family Hour and was known for telling clean stories, this pairing made people, including those in the cast, look twice. The girl was still in high school. Dean wasn't in college anymore. Still, they were supposed to play lovers, have romantic scenes, and be emotionally close. People all over the world can see their first kiss on TV. The creators made that choice, which caused tension and discomfort that never really went away. She didn't try to hide how she felt. She was filled with feeling when she first heard Dean was cast. She said it was a perfect storm of sadness, fear, anger, and sickness. She had imagined acting with someone about the same age as her, someone who knew what it was like to be a kid. They instead brought in a man, a guy with beard, a guy she would know to kiss. That wasn't just acting, though. It became real. Laura's first kiss happens in the episode called Sweet 16. Lisa did the same thing. It wasn't just her first kiss on camera. She had never kissed before. There were no dates, experiences, or other things that could have helped her get ready for it. Just a film group. Lots of lights, and almost 100 people looked at the cameras as they rolled. Dean Butler knew it wasn't right. He later said he was really scared. He said she was only a little girl. It was tough. He knew that this kind of casting would never work in Hollywood today. It would be turned down right away. But it did happen back then. It was one of the most talked about parts of the show's history. What went on behind the scenes made it even harder. Barbara Abellis, Melissa's mother, stood behind the cameras and watched. Barbara began to cry as her daughter leaned in to kiss her. This wasn't a happy moment. It hurt a lot. The little girl she was taking care of was growing up on a set with an adult man in front of everyone. Dean had a clear memory of it. In his autobiography, Prairie, he wrote that Barbara had never liked the idea of him being hired. When they kissed, she went from not liking it to being very sad. He said she couldn't stand seeing me kiss her daughter. Melissa, on the other hand, did everything she could to avoid it. Michael Landon, who made the show, was begged to change scenes. "Isn't a hug enough?" she would ask, wanting to stay in her safety zone very much. But the stories didn't stop. Scene after scene, kiss after kiss. She had to play the part every time, even when she was sick, after never having felt love in real life, or scared, and people could tell. A few people loved the romance. Some people were shocked. One mother wrote to a newspaper and said the casting director should be burned at the stake for putting together a teenage girl and an adult guy. Dean Butler also got mail. Some fans said it made them feel bad to watch those scenes. They were right, too. In 1979, an article said that it would be the hardest part of the season. Not because of the lines, but because of how things really are. Dean Butler might have the hardest part of the 1979 ADTV season. In other words, he has to show people that it's okay for an adult man to love a teenage girl. Even though there was criticism, the show was a huge hit. It was the most watched show on Nielsen, and it was shown twice during prime time that summer. It became well known. After many years, TV Land would even give them a prize for the most memorable kiss in the history of TV. But how much did it cost? A girl who was 15 years old was made to feel like an adult, a mother who was left to cry in the dark, an actor who was very uncomfortable, and an industry that put numbers above all else at the time. Dean said afterward, "Today, you just couldn't do it." He's right. Things have changed. The rules have changed. The way Hollywood treats young artists has also changed, which is a good thing. That change came too late for Melissa Gilbert, though. Her youth was shaped by a story she didn't write. From the TV show, Melissa Gilbert's life looked great. Behind the scenes, though, things were going badly. Melissa was slowly becoming addicted to drugs, while millions of people watched her as Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie. In her teens, it began and quickly got worse. It was 2 full bottles of wine every night by the time she was an adult. That wasn't just drinking for fun. She was trying to stay alive, and it almost killed her. She passed out and fell asleep in her dog's bed one night while she had guests over for dinner. That's when she knew she had to change how she was living, but she didn't just drink to escape. Besides that, she used drugs. She felt alone because of her fame, and the stress of being a kid star never went away. For a while, the drugs made her forget about everything, but the damage was done all over her life. Her relationships got worse. Her parenting got worse. In the end, her own son begged her to stop drinking, which broke her heart. It hurt her more than anything else had before. It was the alarm she couldn't turn off. She joined Alcoholics' Help the next day. The 12-step program saved her life. As she listened to other people tell their worst stories in those meetings, she finally felt less alone. It was in her 2009 book Prairie that she let down her guard and told the truth about her addictions, failed relationships, and the emotional damage her youth in the spotlight caused. But that wasn't the end of the pain. Melissa tried out for a part in Oliver Stone's movie The Doors in the early 1990s. For years, she couldn't forget what happened next. Gilbert said that Stone wanted to get even. She had said bad things about him in public before. Now, he set her up at the interview. She was given a scene that he said he had written just for her. It wasn't a real event, it was a trick. The lines were very clear. She had to say the words again while on her knees. "Honey, do me." She felt ashamed. She was crying and looked at her coldly and said, "Good. It will be better after that." Unknown to her, the casting director left, leaving her alone with Stone and another character. She cried and ran out. She still thinks that the whole thing was planned as a punishment. Stone later said it wasn't true, but Gilbert never changed his mind. After that, she got married to Bo Brinkman. At first glance, it looked like a Hollywood romance, but 6 weeks after meeting, they were engaged and on their way to a terrible relationship. He hurt her feelings, drank too much, and cheated on her all the time. Their marriage, which lasted 6 years, slowly fell apart. Not only did Brinkman steal, he did it without feeling bad about it. One of the worst betrayals was when he was said to have slept with Melissa's former Little House co-star, Shannon Doherty. Doherty used to look up to her and treat her like a big sister. Now, she was a part of her broken heart. She was only 19 years old at the time. Brinkman was about 40 years old. Melissa didn't think twice when asked what she'd say to Doherty again after all these years. She said, "I wouldn't say anything. I would hit her in the face." Even though that was bad, what happened next was much worse. The baby's cries woke Melissa up just 2 months after she had a C-section and gave birth to their son, Dakota. She went downstairs to get a bottle warm. She almost lost it when she saw what was in the living room. Her husband was having sex with someone else while sitting on the couch. The TV gave the scene a dim glow. She thought for a moment that it had to be a dream, but it wasn't. He asked her, "What are you looking at?" as she stood there in shock. There is no shame or remorse, only pride. She didn't cry or scream. She went to the fridge, got the milk, heated it up, and then went back upstairs to feed their baby. The woman turned out to be a sex worker while her husband kept cheating on her right there on their couch. She was found by Brinkman on The Robin Bird Show, a late-night sex show. When Melissa later confronted him, he said it was her fault. He told her it was her fault, that she wasn't ready to get physical after surgery. It wasn't over yet. When the woman left, Brinkman stormed upstairs. "What's wrong with you?" he yelled. He tried to start a fight when she tried to keep things calm for their small child. He asked her what was wrong when she told him she couldn't believe he had brought a hooker into their house. That wasn't all he did. He told her she was selfish, blamed her for his job being held up, and emotionally hurt her. Because he couldn't be reached, she told her mother about her pregnancy before telling him. For 3 days, he didn't say a word to her. He didn't show up to their baby shower at all because he overdrank. Melanie Gilbert's life didn't just change. It had sharp turns, big jumps, and falls that were hard to expect. But her story stayed very human through it all. After 2 bad marriages and decades in the public eye, she found something she didn't expect when she was 48. Love. That person was named Timothy Busfield. There had been times when they worked together for more than 20 years, but never as more than co-workers. In late 2012, that changed. During the holidays, they said yes to marriage. The wedding took place at the San Isidro Ranch in Santa Barbara on April 24, 2013, and was very quiet and lovely. She wore a bright red gown without straps by Morgan Le Fay instead of white. Gilbert had 2 boys at the time. Busfield was married and had 3 kids of his own. They weren't beginning over. Their lives were coming together. Gilbert felt different this time, though. Busfield made her a real partner, which she had never had before. Someone who helped her grow and believed in her. They left the chaos of Hollywood in 2018 and went to upstate New York. They now live and work together. "Work together is my favorite thing in the world," she said. But Gilbert dove into the storm before he found peace. She was chosen to serve on the Screen Actors Guild Board of Directors in 2000. After only 1 year, she shocked everyone by becoming the 3rd woman to ever be chosen president of SAG. The race was very rough. She was up against Valerie Harper. Gilbert got 12.80% of the votes out of a total of 27,630. From 1992 to now, Harper got 10,000. That's 45.3% to 39.4%. People who work in Hollywood were shocked. The union was split up when William Daniels was president, and his guidance caused the longest strike in Hollywood history. In 2000, marketers were banned for 6 months. Gilbert said she would get rid of the chaos, and she did. She won again in March 2002. This time, out of 37,742 votes, she got 21,351, which is more than 50%. The number of votes cast hit a new high of 41.4%. She met with governors, mayors, and senators while she was president from 2001 to 2005. She fought hard for theater artists' rights. She became vice president of the AFL-CIO in December 2001. The woman who used to play Laura Ingalls became one of the most important labor leaders in the United States all of a sudden. Then she shocked them again, just when they thought they did understand her. Gilbert said she was running for Congress on August 10, 2015, when she was 51 years old. That's not in California or New York. It's in Michigan's 8th District, which is a haven for Republicans. It had only been 2 years since she moved there. Right away, there was reaction. The people who were against her called her a tax cheat. They found that she owed the federal government $360,000 and the state of California $112,000. That is almost $500,000 in back taxes that haven't been paid. The things she said were to blame: a stalled job, the effects of the recession, and her divorce. She had a payment plan. The campaign went on until May 24, 2016. Then she suddenly pulled away, not because of politics, but because it hurt. In 2012, while she was dancing on Dancing with the Stars, she fell and hurt her head and neck. Later, a deck at her home in Studio City fell in. The wounds never got better. 2 bulging discs in her back meant she needed surgery, the doctors told her. Her right hand was no longer feeling anything. It hurt her arm a lot. Her neck hurt. There was no other Democrat on the ticket, so when she dropped out, her Republican opponent won. The race was over, but she didn't give up her fight. Gilbert kept working for change even after he left Congress. In 2002, she went to an event at the White House put on by First Lady Laura Bush to encourage everyone in the United States to read and write. Behind the scenes, she also talked to White House workers about copyright and production problems that were getting out of hand. Big problems for people who work in American movies. In Saji, she led important panels on affirmative action and the rights of young performers. She stood for being different. She stood for kids who act. She also chose a side when things got political. She spoke out strongly in favor of Planned Parenthood during her 2016 campaign. In a tweet, she agreed with Idrik's PP stand. She took part in Walk for Choice events. It was more than just a political stand. She and her brother were both adopted. Her support for abortion wasn't just a catchphrase, it was about them. In 2014, she worked as a campaign worker for Mark Schauer, who was running for governor of Michigan. She cared a lot about political causes, but her most famous public moment happened when she was only 21 years old. Melanie Gilbert was the youngest person to ever get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1985. It's at 6429 Hollywood Boulevard and will always tell people that she wasn't just a child star. She had already created The Miracle Worker, which won an Emmy in 1979.